Thank you. Oh, nice. Like this remind me of then so bucket and come on. Yeah. Are you good? Okay. It's Michael through a distance. We don't want to put it inside.
Just welcome back, Bob, and then thank you for including us as part of your education. We appreciate it so much. And we hope to do this again and again. And thank you all for coming. It's great. So with that said, I think you guys all know who Bob Thurman is. For an introduction.
Thank you. Oh, hello, Pretty Temple. About the project over there. Where did Milas run away?
You're on, is it?
Oh, there it is. Hello. Okay. Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. To you. Does everybody have a copy of the Heart Sutra?
Yes.
Does everybody get a copy?
Yes.
Because we like to imitate.
Rob, is there more?
Yeah.
Do we have maybe 3 or 4? Thank you.
I like to imitate this holiness by starting by everyone reading together the Heart Sutra.
I didn't get myself.
You can hold the rest. I'm over here.
I have not had, and I hope to see everyone's lips moving while we read it. It was considered.
Rob.
Does everyone have them outside? I hope.
Oh, I need one.
Working together.
Thank you.
It's very good for everyone to read it and we read it in the way they do in Zen, which is hard in English because English is very college syllabic language. And it's considered that when you read the Heart Sutra, when any negative spirit hears the Heart Sutra, they run away. They don't like it. And then we do it, well, we count 3 times at the end, which is seal the deal. Although Dalai doesn't like that in a way, he says he wants any negative spirits to hang out, to become less negative. And then luckily, then my room is wearing the Heart Sutra, which is very good. There is a Japanese no play, I think, where one monk goes to a haunted temple where people get killed by a demon that lives in the haunted temple. And he shows that his faith in the Heart Sutra is so great that he will survive, and he has the Heart Sutra painted everywhere on every inch of his body. But still typical of no play. At the end of the play, bad. He's dead as a doornail the next point. He went into the ear hole. Oh, okay. No. Okay, so we will read together in Zen way, and I will make this. I forgot to bring my wooden fish. I have a wooden fish. And some nice people gave me. No, which is like that. Let's say nature, the Zen monster. So we do it syllable by syllable. Okay, everyone? And I hope I hear a good noise by you. Don't be shy. We go slowly at first. In Sanskrit, I'm putting in front of in Sanskrit. In Tibet. Let's see. Saturday. Or no, those are issues to. Yeah. By the time we finish tomorrow, I hope we'll have a roaring sound. Skip the back part, we're not reading. We later will look at it. Then I woke up this morning, decided to write some notes. And there's 3 sessions that we have. One I hope will be the takeaways that everyone will have. And actually, I was lucky to wake up because then I had taken the cover. So it woke me up early and at dawn. Dawn, I'm so happy to be here. So thankful to be here. And Lieutenant Couchot and Nature Piche and who kept this center going so beautifully, and also to the wonderful Japanese immigrants who came here many maybe a century ago or more, and then built this place. I don't know the exact timing. Who made this nice place and the first stage of it. And I'm so very happy that all here. I'm always grateful to students who come and listen and even discuss, because I get also depressed about the state of the world and things like that quite a lot after even 60 years of dealing with all this and with the Dharma. But once I start talking, I feel much better. I persuade myself that it's okay. And even fine, I find the half full of the glass of the threatened planet and the people dying and being slaughtered by idiot men, usually. I think Marianne Williamson has a nice statement where she says there's 72 wars on the planet at the moment, and not one of them was started by a woman. But unlike in Mrs. Strata, I think the women around those men don't deny them any affection, which might help stop that. Might help some of them who are capable of receiving or giving any affection. So anyway, so that's the thing. So main takeaway is the reason I gave the title Wisdom is Bliss eventually to my recent book, which still didn't quite break beyond, like in this Heart Sutra we did, I made a new thing. It's not that I'm a disciple of Tony Robbins. Nowadays, I said hundreds of thousands of people having new stories instead of their old stories of feeling like defeatism and can't get anything done, and can't get anywhere. They'll all be hopeless and they'll kill us all, so they're like, I won't do anything because that won't have any effect, which is unfortunately our default situation. And then the new story is we all have tremendous power, and if we whatever small thing we can do, the great story that made me tell yesterday because of the nice red dog that is running around here about the dog. The dog is there, but about the dog that Asanga met when he wanted to meet the future Buddha, and probably you'll know that, but we might tell it during this event together. Where finally he was really depressed and really defeated, and really down and impossible. So he finally thought that one thing he could do was save the lives for a brief time of a few maggots in order to clean up the hindquarters of a dog that had dead flesh on it, gangrene flesh on its body. And so he went to take the maggot off the body of the dog with his tongue. That was all he could do, make things better. And then, poof, the future Buddha was in front of him. And of course, being human, he first bowed, but before he came up from the first bow, he was complaining. Like, where have you been? How come I'm seeing you now? So anyway, I'm not telling a story at length now. So wisdom is bliss because reality is bliss. Right now, reality, we're all bliss. We're all made of bliss. Everybody's tip of everybody's nose is bliss. You can't find it if you try to find it. And as the Heart Sutra says, no nose, no eye, no ear. Because in fact, you like this is not the tip of my nose. You know, the tip of my nose, there's an XYZ, that's the exact tip of my nose, but it's not on my nose, right? Because the point is not anywhere, right? If you make a dot, that's not a point, right? It's a small circle, small sphere in 3 dimensions. So not any place I will put a touch on my habitual nose, what I call, we in America, our lifelong hood ornament, which is always there in front of us, but unless we have tiny little noses, we can't find it. And we can't, every point on it that we touch is not it. That's what no nose means, right? It's there when you don't look for it. When you do, it's not there. So what does that mean if you really know that at the same time as you worry about the knowledge? That's what Heart Sutra is telling us. But anyway, what reality actually is bliss. It's nirvana. And that's what Buddha actually said, most importantly. My new thing that I began to tell in that book, but now, so I changed the meaning, I changed the translation of the word emptiness, if you may have noticed. There was no word emptiness in that sutra, or voidness, which I want to be shocking, or shunyata, but I used the word freedom. I don't know if you noticed that. Some of you heard that's familiar with Buddhism. Might be not surprised because after all, everybody in America knows what freedom is. Actually, in Texas, W said, "Hey, our freedom." You know, whatever Texans think their freedom is, and so everybody knows, but actually nobody knows what freedom is. Freedom is a negation. Sugar-free, salt-free, trouble-free, pain. Oh, I'm pain-free today. Oh, I'm suffering-free today. I'm happy. Oh, that's like bliss. I'm temporarily relieved. So yeah, that's actually an accurate translation of shunyata. And shunyata is a scientific discovery. So we're beginning with science. We're not talking about, we're in a temple, which is nice, but we're talking about Buddha's teaching, not as Buddhism, as people say in America, Buddha, all that Buddhism. That's why I changed actually the original title of my last book that I wrote the working title was Buddhas Have More Fun. That was the original title. But I realized in my editor that what any American who reads or anybody who reads Buddha, they think, oh, the Buddhists. But Buddha wasn't a Buddhist, in case you didn't notice. Because there was no Buddhism at that time. Buddha was just teaching reality, which he discovered. He discovered what was real. And since he found, and his announcement was the third noble truth. Not the first one. The first one is a description of unreality. The unreality, the illusion, the delusion that we live on is suffering, which we think we're having because we think we don't have enough of whatever it is. And we think other beings also, therefore we always project on others like us. And so therefore, since we always want something more, we think they do. And then we're afraid of them because we think they might want something from us. So therefore, we live in a paranoid way, you know, and we're scared of everybody, and we live in a fear reality. And all of our cultures, including Indian culture in Buddha's time, and even still, and Chinese and Japanese and whatever, Tibet even, is fear-based. And they have a God that is going to protect you. They tell you that someone will protect you. And then they tell you when you don't feel protected, well, they're going to do it later. Or you're not good enough. Or you're in the wrong department, or under the wrong denomination, or don't know the right language, whatever, you have some reason. But later, usually basically she, will get around to it, and you'll be later. Just you have to believe that. You know, that's what they tell you. And so they tell you that they tell you that they will protect it. And then they have kings and they have high priests who will enforce this, and you will culturally internalize it. And then they will lead you onward into more suffering under the guise of they're protecting you, because reality is such that you should be scared, you should be afraid, you should be very much afraid. But actually, Buddha's discovery was, wow, reality is bliss, it's great. And I'm going to digress to tell this one story. Then I met a pediatrician recently, very nice man who was the pediatrician. We met him at a dinner. And then he and his wife came to Menla, to Ben House's Bliss Resort Spa in the Catskill Mountains, that Nina is very proud of. Nina gets all the credit for creating it, actually. Well, it was given, the land and the buildings were given to her, but she fixed them up. Instead of being run down, ramshackle, they became happy Tibetans, like Miguel and Maria down here. Became really nice. And anyway, they came for dinner, and we sat down to have dinner with his wife in the corner of the Menlo dining area. And suddenly he says, "Oh, I just can't wait to tell you." And we said, "Well, what? Please tell us." He said, "I just wanted you to know that I died when I was 16 years old." Okay, well, that leads to the question: are you alive now? Well, then tell us how it happened. Well, he said, I grew up in a fundamentalist evangelical church in California. And they had a summer program where some of the teenagers in that church, very, very Orthodox church, would go to Guatemala, and they would get some of the kids out, the church would get some kids out of the slums there. And is that Tegucigalpa or whatever it is? Really quite a name or whatever it is. And you take them for hikes, like fresh air sort of summer program, right? And he was 16 leading his troop of kids, as I guess a local guide. And then he stepped into what looked like a nice place in the jungle area with no plants, which he thought was just some ash, from the volcano nearby. But actually it was quicksand, and he sank in the quicksand and died. And it took them hours to get him out. They had to find ropes and things and like sticks, pieces of wood, pull him, take him. He had a tag around his ankle, wanted to be sent back to California. And meanwhile, he was aware that that was happening, he said, and he was in a river of bliss. He knew that he was in the bliss of reality. He was in reality. He was aware that his former body was there. And he was blissing out. He never had such bliss. And it was a river, he said, it was flowing down this river. And then he came to where the river, the stream that he was part of, emptied into like a piazza, I guess, because they call it Guatemala, I guess, a Spanish kind of piazza. And there was a fountain in the middle of the piazza, and who was sort of sitting back, leaning against the fountain? But Jesus. So I asked him, how did you recognize it was Jesus? I said, he said, well, I went to church. I was there. I can recognize. Jesus said to him, well, it's a bit early. Because he was just 16, right? I think that's what he didn't elaborate on that. He said, oh, it's a bit early. But then Jesus kind of said, well, but okay, onward, and gestured to another flow of the river, onward. And then he was ready to keep going on the river of Bliss. And then he had a second thought. And he thought to himself, well, there was a few things I want to get done back in California. And so, since there was this sort of hesitation in the river's flow, there was Jesus. He said, well, I'm happy here. This is great. I'm going to onward with the stream, but a bliss. But there were a few things I didn't get done. And then he says, Jesus kind of looked up and said, and then he didn't say this, but I had to tell on the skateboard. Jesus sort of looked out at his iPhone. And he glanced at his clipboard, whatever, registry. and looked up at him as he was sort of poised to go into the next row of the stream, and said, "Well, it's a bit late," meaning he'd been dead already a while. And but then said, "Well, I guess it's okay if you want to tackle a few other things," and waved his hand, and boom, he came back to life in the tent where he was laying on the party was with the tag around his ankle. And then everybody was like, "Whoa." So, yeah, it was a wonderful person. He became a great doctor. And the people whose children he was a pediatrician, they loved him. That's why we met him. Marvelous man. Then he told a story about an adventure I won't tell now about when the freeways collapsed in the earthquake in Bay Area 2 years ago, when he was in India, a resident, and he had the most harrowing thing. And that's when he really decided to be a doctor, he said, but I'll tell that later. Anyway, so that's just to let you know that therefore, when we say reality is bliss, which everybody feels very dubious about, since we're constantly dissatisfied, all of us, we have to tackle death right away. So the main takeaway I want us to be open-minded about the idea that we might actually be already now. Now the dualistic Buddhists, what we could call very, but they're basically dualistic in the sense that they heard the third noble truth, that's nirvana, which is the truth of nirvana, the reality of nirvana, which was Buddha's most important, most real reality, let's say. And so they heard that, but they think therefore that somewhere else they're going to go. It's like a New Yorker going to Hawaii in the winter. And beyond Hawaii, it's like ultimate Hawaii. And so it's something other than this life, than what we're suffering in. And that's a dualism in the sense that those are the two realities for your Theravada Buddhists, or the Theravada's 8 out of 18 different schools of mendicants in the Buddha's time that developed, seeking a nirvana elsewhere, which he encouraged them to do. And he was sneakily very vague about exactly what it would be like when they would ask things like, "Oh, will I still be there in nirvana, or what is it?" And he would never say it. He would just say, "You will attain freedom from suffering. You will." But in Mahayana, he clearly said, obviously, that was simplistic. You're thinking that that's what I meant, because, since it's eternal bliss and it's absolutely perfect, it can't have been a time when it wasn't the case. If it's a place from which there's a boundary where there's another place that's suffering going on still, then it's a relative place and it's not reliable. It's a final place, which is really very obvious. So therefore, if it's true, if it is such a thing as nirvana, freedom from the cessation of suffering, not cessation of life, but cessation of suffering, it already has to be there. And to find it, we have to properly understand where we are, or as they would say, they don't use the word understanding. Understanding shows us the limitations of it. No, it does. You think, "Oh, I understand," but what am I standing under? How can that be a change if I'm standing under something else? I hope it doesn't fall on me. So that's not really transformation. In Sanskrit, to understand, nirvana means you go over into it. So anything new you understand about life, you're in a different life. If you understand it differently, the world is different. That's the greatness of education, and why Buddha was an educator. He was a scientist and an educator. He doesn't fit in the category of a prophet about a religion, which the sociologists of religion in recent centuries had a lot of problem with Buddha. How to fit him in. Because, prophet meets God. God tells him, "I'll save them." Prophet tells him, "Believe in God, he'll save you." Right? That's how you categorize a religion. And whereas Buddha met God, God said, "I can't save you. Don't be mad. Don't think I'm doing it just meanly that I'll not save you, but actually I can, because you have to save yourself. And but I'll help." That's what God said to Buddha. So then Buddha had to, how do people save themselves? Well, they have to educate themselves to get rid of their misunderstanding, their misperception, their delusion about what they are and what life is. So they need to become educated, and the good thing about the expression of education, and I'm eternally grateful, thanks again to Nana, and with the help of my mother, and the help of my Geshe Wangyang, my wonderful root teacher, that instead of when I ceased being a Buddhist monk many years ago, I didn't try to start a Dharma center to become sort of a professional, sort of enlightened person. So I could continue happily to be ignorant and annoying, and became an academic teacher about it all, and which enabled me to keep studying this wonderful education and to help others, and to the meaning of our English word is a good one, educare, from Latin, to lead out of the inner wisdom of the people, their own wisdom, for themselves to be free and understand the nature of life. Right? Not impose and indoctrinate them in such and such a thing. In fact, I really hate it when modern translators, my colleagues, translate the word dharma as doctrine. It really annoys me. It really does bug me. But a lot of things about them bug me, as you will see. So my new thing is really, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble by it. For a lot of people, from conventional Buddhist scholars, and probably some lamas and some roshis and some different people. I'm sure I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. I'll tell you why and why and why. Okay, so this is the thing. So I hope you will, probably some of you already live in places. After all, you're in Hawaii. So you maybe know that, when you don't experience something as big, then there's some way you could shift it where you could. So you sort of feel close to it and you're not dominated by fear. But probably many people will come and tell you, oh, don't be sure, oh, we're gonna lose this, oh, they're gonna destroy the planet, oh, your grandchildren will be them, oh, this, and then they will tell you that, and then you'll feel defeated. And because that then justifies them for what they are not doing. That's why people insist on discouraging us from doing the right thing. Whenever we are already able to do it, they will tell us how to do that. Because they don't want to do it, usually. Okay? Is that a good start? So you're gonna, and this is the great thing. When you teach about Buddhism, if you do it properly, you're not seeking to indoctrinate anybody. Because what Buddha's realistic worldview is, the first point of the Eightfold Path, which is the curriculum of Buddha's school, to help people find the nirvana of the reality of themselves, the freedom from suffering of themselves, being a blissful human in this amazing machine we have, which is total artificial intelligence. We are already artificial. So they didn't catch up yet with their mechanisms, their machines, and their money. They did not. Our brain still has trillions of different potentials. And even if we really get somewhere, we will realize that our brain is bigger than the wet whale. And a human body cannot encompass all of what we individuals know. Because after all, every one of us has been everything already. Because there's news flash to the astrophysicist cosmologist. There is no beginning to the universe. It's always been going on. And it has always included our tiny little infinitesimal part of it. We've been part of it forever. So everybody's been in everything, actually. We may have been Buddhists for all we know already. Because one thing Buddhists do, there's this unbelievable thing to a Westerner about what a Buddha is, who's not a god, doesn't create anything. A Buddha is a being who thinks he, she, it, they, would have a long list of possible pronouns, like some of the young people do nowadays, is everyone else. Wouldn't that be a shock to you? You're meditating in your Zen center or here in your Tibetan Dharma center, you're meditating away to the ritual, you bring your bell, and you wave your lifeline, do whatever you do. And suddenly, you're everyone else in the room simultaneously. You're seeing yourself out of everybody else's eyes. and seeing all this other, you feel you're what you have achieved what I call the expensive oneness. The cheap oneness is you have a big thing where you feel like you're about space. You space out. Because you analyze everything and it all disappears under analysis. You don't end up with a Higgs boson. No way. You don't end up in dark matter and dark energy. No way. You end up being in a space with and nobody's there. And you don't feel guilty like you left them behind because you're not there. But you sort of think you are the space. And it feels like ecstatic at the first moment because you don't have anymore have a pain in your thumb joint. Okay. And you're not worried about Uncle Joe or your niece and nephew, etc. And you're in this glass space. That's what I call the cheap oneness. Because there's no problem, supposedly. Because you forget about having ever been anywhere else temporarily. Expensive one is where you feel just like that, and everybody else is there. And you're still feeling really grouped out. And then you notice they aren't. But you don't notice it from someone who's looking at body language or facial expression or whatever medical diagnosis. You notice it from inside everybody's own mind and feelings and heart. You feel you are everything else. Isn't that, wouldn't that be weird? There's a thing, it's a verbal, Dzongkhapa, who was one of the great masters in Tibetan history. It was like another Buddha. There are many Buddhas. And he was like one of the really good ones about 500 years ago, 600 years ago now. And one thing which they don't even write in many of the Tibetan biographies, they write about, oh, he had an amazing experience, he had a dream, he met Nagarjuna and Buddha, blah, blah. And then he was looking at the text, and then everything became clear. But then he said, and it's an oral tradition kind of, that it was the opposite of what he expected. Because, and he'd been a child prodigy, he was 41 years of age. He'd been in a 5-year retreat. He was a child prodigy, he read every book and commented on it and elucidated and lectured on it, whatever. It was considered like the foremost person in the country. And yet when he really had a breakthrough, where he really kind of got it, it was the opposite of what he expected. And I don't know, I may not have, I don't really know, but I think it was because suddenly he was 100% empathetic with everybody else. And therefore, he was seeing his supposed self from all of their different perspectives. And not just the humans, everyone. The dogs, the cats, the cockroaches, the bugs, the mosquitoes. He was seeing them from everyone's perspective. At the same time, he didn't lose his own perspective. So it's a weird, it's like a cognitive dissonant awareness, embracing awareness, where he could, if someone really is empathetic with you, supposedly, they would see your dissatisfaction, but they'd see that in your heart you have a wide open, loving, wise, completely life force energy being within you that is actually your bliss force, your vital energy, your health, actually. And somewhere in you is that, but you are not paying attention to that. You are like, want more of whatever it is. So you're actually strangling your own awareness of your blissfulness of your own situation. Because there's something else that you think would be better. Isn't it like that a little bit? Like when we have a really ecstatic thing, when does it stop? When we stop to think, how ecstatic is this? Then I should have taken a bigger dose. I should be with someone else. I should be somewhere else. So then it's all seems so good, doesn't it? Right? All right? You got it? So that's expensive one. So that's the expensive one. And what that means, that's a weird one. That took me 45 years. And then I was editing, and I had to actually rewrite in English the doctoral dissertation of a student, which I was then publishing as a book, which he translated from Tibetan, a work that was originally the work of the future Buddha Maitreya, the Sangha, the great Saint Sangha from the 4th century, the early 5th century, received in heaven, Tushita heaven, from Maitreya, the next Buddha. The next Buddha is sitting in the Star Trek heavenly plane. It isn't a ship, but it's like a plane called Tushita. And Tushita means total satisfaction. Tushti is to be completely satisfied. And unlike our word tush, I think it could, but and he's looking at the planet and he's waiting to come down, and the Tibetans believe, which is why there's so many mutts and weird dogs around Tibetan monasteries. They believe that he emanates as dogs for the suspicious, frightened, terrified, dissatisfied humans who are worried about a wolf chasing them and gobbling them up in a hard Russian winter. And therefore, when they have a faithful dog who's like, oh, you got the dog, how nice, wriggling their tail, then they feel they can trust that dog and they pat the dog, and the dog is like, so that's Maitreya. So therefore, they don't have vets in those monasteries. They don't take care of the dog. Some of them are feral, and it's kind of a problem. But then come along and creates an ASPCA, hopefully, in the future. And then they were, of course, quite shocked that Chinese would eat them. But it was a kind of a solution temporarily. But they didn't like that. So, so that book was translated into Tibetan, and then it's kind of lost in Sanskrit for a long time because Sangha was Indian, and then that student of mine was Chinese, and he translated it into Chinese from the Tibetan, and then he had to write in English to get his degree. He can't turn into PhD thesis at Columbia University in Chinese. But his English wasn't that good, so then I had to rewrite it. Then in rewriting it, I realized that all the Buddhas, and there have been infinite numbers of Buddhas in the universe. It's countless, just like we are countless. Unlikely beings are countless. And all those Buddhas think they are us. So what we call our Buddha nature is actually our sort of dim perception that every Buddha is thinking they are us. And they're obviously, therefore, they're still Buddhas, and yet they're completely enmeshed in us. But it's not like the alien. They're not going to like give birth and we're going to be discarded like a shell. It's that they are actually our own heart. In their perception. In ours, they're different beings, like Buddha was 10,000 years ago, a different planet, on the universe, etc. We feel. But I always felt that it was the openness of our us that was our Buddha nature. The emptiness was defined that way for philosophical time. But it's not, it's the freedom. So our inner freedom is our bliss, actually. I won't call it emptiness, I'll say our freedom. It's because the Indians scientifically invented the decimal system. That these frightened Silicon Valley people, they're all now terrified of AI because they naturally projected AI will be like them. So they think that AI will be a projection of them. Because everybody projects everybody else, it's just like that. Yeah. And Buddha, therefore, sees us all as potential Buddhas. That's what I'm saying. So our possibility of being potential Buddha is all of the Buddhas completely intermeshed with every fiber, every subatomic particle, every pure energy of our being. Isn't that a wonderful thought? So when we're miserable, when we cause harm to ourselves or to another person, we're actually being nasty to Buddhas, since everyone is like that. There's one of them was said in the Lotus Sutra, whose name Sada Aparibhuta, Sada Aparibhuta, and Sada Aparibhuta, and he was someone who can be translated as always never overcome, or always never defeated, or it could be translated as always creeping, ever creeping. So the ever creeping Bodhisattva. But the reason he was ever creeping is because when he saw other beings, he saw them all as Buddhas. So he would bounce them. And then some guy who was misweighing the oranges that he was getting for breakfast and cheating him didn't want to be bound to at some point. So he'd say, stop bowing at me. And eventually they'd like throw things at him until get away. And then he would keep bowing at them as he creeped away. That's like that. So anyway. So I hope the takeaway will be, we go beyond fear. And and actually, the other thing, that's Lotus Sutra thing, by the way, which doesn't get a lot of play. But of course they love it and they worship it. And actually they hire monks to come and chant it at high speed in Tibetan. The translation is Tibetan. To chant it because they feel when the sutra is in the air, it's helping the plants and it's helping the mice and it's helping everybody. So they love to have them going, but they don't study it. Because they think it's sort of beyond them and they study the manual ABC, how to meditate, how to learn this and that. They never meditate. They don't tell you to meditate. Meditation is not Buddhism. Meditation is not the solution unless you have learned something first. If you haven't learned something to correct some misguided idea that we have, and open your mind. If your mind is not open, if your mind is closed around something and you meditate a lot, guess what? 20 years later, you jump up with a sort of absoluteness of your closure. That's why a lot of those meditation classes turn into a kind of cult where some guy wants a Cadillac or something and abuses people. It's a he. And it creates a scandal. Because they didn't before, that's the panacea, just meditate, you'll be fine. That's not the case. Especially because of the whole issue about the self, the ego. And it isn't that we don't have ego. Buddha has ego. But they say Buddha has a diamond ego. So don't worry, you're not going to lose your ego. No, where's ego? Psychologists in the West have been terrified of Buddhism and Hinduism, which is really similar. All of India was like that, pretty much, whatever they were calling it. And they were very scared because they thought if everybody meditated too much with this and became enlightened, they would all not know how to organize their psychophysical constituents. They'd all need diapers. They wouldn't know how to restrain themselves and pee in the right place. Seriously. So they're very scared of it. They're like Carl Jung. Oh, those Asian things that the Westerners are going to be very dangerous for them. But they would have, no, Buddha has diamond ego. Buddha. You have to have a powerful ego if you suddenly think you're everybody else. How do you keep your own sense of being able to help them and not just be dragged into their suffering? Being totally feeling or something, right? And yet have some other thing. The enlightenment, therefore, being a state of the total embrace of cognitive dissonance, right? Two totally opposite things. And everyone teaches that. You know what I discovered? F. Scott Fitzgerald, the great Gatsby guy, he said, sign of a great mind is the ability to hold fully intact two opposite things in your mind at the same time. I say, Buddha, what? I thought that was so marvelous. I mean, we could be crushed by two contradictions if we take each one as sort of absolute reality in a certain way. But if we realize the perspectivality, relativity, of things, relationality of things, the contextuality of everything, then we can somehow see that there's a way of seeing opposite things in a way where you can hold both of them at the same time. On the other hand, without sacrificing the ability to make a critical judgment that actually one is better than the other, even if a tiny bit. And that's the amazing thing. See, if we realize that life is bliss, and we are bliss, but we're actually made of bliss. The good doctor is the doctor who can see the health in the patient as well as the symptom and the problem. The bad doctor is trying to make money and only wants to see the sickness. But the good one sees that there's health in the patient. It doesn't come from what the doctor does. But the ability of the doctor to see it is what can generate through an unconscious, unwitting body language, general cheerfulness in life, general way of being, bedside manner, that produces in the patient the placebo effect, which they all admit statistically is the most powerful medicine there is. The person's confidence that their own energy can somehow overcome whatever it is. Not just them saying, oh yeah, I'm gonna get do it, when they really inside don't think so. But actually at some, from their cells, there's a sense of confidence arising. You realize that our cells know a lot more than we know with our language and our faith. Otherwise, in Mark Epstein, my psychiatrist friend, the immortal phrase, how would it be possible that a woman could turn tuna fish into a beautiful new being? She doesn't do it with her. We're reading instructions how to make a baby. They develop the spine now on this day, and then the limbs sticking out, and it looks like a frog, and then it looks like a turtle, and like the 10 stages of Vishnu. How he was amazed at how Arlene, his good wife, made their lovely son and daughter out of tuna fish, out of what she eats. That's tells us the wisdom of the body itself. It does that. Men can't do that. Of course, men can give milk though. They have been known. If they get a little bit Dairy Queen is over there. In a catastrophe, the desert island. Feed the baby. Much less taste of it. Mixed with testosterone. Okay, so let me see. So that's the thing. So yes. Okay. I love Mrs. Kalachakra, the female version of the time machine Buddha. They say that she's the only Buddha deity, in the Tantric Indian and Tibetan Tantric Buddhism. It's the only deity that manifests the body without bothering with the atoms. So it's a body of pure energy. So no MC squared needed, no Higgs boson problem, just pure energy. And so I think somehow that's the great mother, those cultures that have a mother deity. It's this sense of presence of like infinite potential around it. It's wonderful. I think the male deity cultures tend to be more violent and more difficult, and especially when the male has no consort, which is why I love Judaism. I do love Judaism. I'm very fond of Judaism because the Shekhinah, which is the female energy of life, even though they don't like the goddess of Babylon or the goddess of not Egyptian and things like that, but at least the Shekhinah can come back on the Sabbath. Whereas the poor Christians all they have is a ghost. She has become a ghost for the Christians and the Muslims, the mother goddess. Okay, so that's the thing. So now let's go back to this fact therefore the reality of bliss is a scientific discovery of Buddha by Buddha in recent history, and then later subsequent many Buddhas, since many people achieved it, and I think there also have been many Buddhas who were not Buddhists and didn't necessarily know what Buddha had taught. I think that's definitely the case. I'm very fond of a book by someone called Stuart White, which I recommend to anybody, who is a literary critic sort of type of person from the West Coast. Apparently, I never met him, but I read his book, which is called Transcendence. And he says that poets and artists in general are like Dharma teachers. They're like Zen masters. They're like Lama or something automatically, even though they don't know anything about Buddhism, like Shelley and Keats and Rimbaud and Baudelaire and Tolstoy, Dostoevsky. The artists are, because the reason they are great artists is that they can change culture with what they create. Painters, writers, sculptors, whatever, Da Vinci, is that they are not trapped in the conceptual network of the culture, the doctrines of the culture. They use them and know them, and in their arts they exploit them to communicate, but they create new terms of discourse in the culture because they they observe reality with fully open minds, which means that it's like they're all like acid heads or something. They have trips where they don't see things only by what they recognize them as. So they see new dimensions in things because they're so open-minded. And then Shelley, I think, made that very famous statement. Poets are the unacknowledged legislators of mankind. I really like that expression. Meaning that they evoke something using the conventional words that gives a new perception to people in the culture, which then becomes routinized as a term in the culture. And that's as they legislate how we can see and perceive. And he beautifully shows that in relation to literary things. That's Stuart Weiss in his book Transcendence. He's very familiar with Buddhism, and he critiques various people who insist that only some Buddhists have become enlightened. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama did also. I'll never forget telling. I was translating for him a few times. I managed to break past those who were monopolizing that duty, and I did. And I translated him once at Harvard Divinity School, and he was talking to the assembled theologians, and he was insisting. And I kept saying to them, "Your Holiness, you don't have to do that right away, please. Not to say that," because he was saying, "I want you all to know I don't believe in God." Yeah. Don't tell him right away. And then I want him to know. Then he said in English to them, he said, "I want you to know this right away." Because if I didn't tell you that, and you didn't know it, you might really get to like me. And then later you would find out I didn't believe in God, and then you would faint. And then he said, and I admit, he said, that Buddhists traditionally think that unless you're a Buddhist, you cannot become enlightened. You don't have enough correct teachings. And I used to think that, and I no longer think that. And he mentioned Thomas Merton, and he mentioned some mystics in Spain, he didn't give the name, who were meditating on love, and who he could feel like an intense flow of love, from them. But he asked them what they were meditating on. He felt they were enlightened. And so he realized that. And he's very strong on this idea. It's the second aim in life. The second aim in life is as a Buddhist monk, that the world religions, including the ones that are not thought of as world religions, because they're local indigenous shamanistic religions. He said that world religions must truly collaborate with each other, cease competing for market share with each other, although he doesn't use the phrase market share. But cease competing to convert each other, and everyone should keep their grandmother's religion as a cultural form, but learn everything they can from every other spiritual teaching that they need to learn anything and keep learning. And he's doing that. And that he told 3 or 4 popes that. He's told the various mullahs, sheikhs, mullahs, Muslims. He's told Hindu swamis that. He went to Kumbh Melas and made pacts like that with Shankaracharyas, not to convert any Hindus to Buddhism, and not to have them try to convert Buddhists to Hinduism and so on. And pretty much, and Protestants, and that's he loves the Jews again for that, because they don't try to convert unless you marry one. And they worry about the children. Otherwise, they don't go out and try to save everybody. And they leave them to whatever they think. But it's very much it. That's his second aim in life, to beyond just mutual tolerance on the surface, a genuine sense of collaboration. We're all working together to help human beings. That's what he wants out of the world. That's his second aim in life. I said I wanted to express how what I do connects to the Dalai Lama's life aims very much, because I so much, and therefore, for example, he was not my root teacher, this wonderful elderly Mongolian man, who was like what a Lama truly is, which is Lama, like a third parent. You have mom and dad, and then you have the Lama, and an extra parent. It's just what psychiatrists in a way are. And that's really what the Lama, the Guru is like that. The Guru is presented in Indian culture like a father, but Lama is more like a father and a mother. So anyway, he tolerated me being a Buddhist, although he never would be my guru. he was so too smart. He said, I'm not your guru. If I adopt the role of guru and you think of me as your guru, then when I criticize you, you're going to be angry with me, and that's a great sin for you. So I'm not your guru, I'm just a friend. And that is the Buddhist model of a teacher, actually. Even at every level, that what they call Kalyana Mitra, a spiritual friend, a virtue friend. That's what he was. So, but then Dalai Lama was always like, well, it's nice that you want to be a Buddhist, and it's great that you're learning law, and that's wonderful. But what about your parents? What about your birth religion? And I used to tell them, I wasn't. They weren't really very religious, and I wasn't very religious. So I don't consider you stole me away from Christianity. And it's kind of calmed him down. But I was really delighted recently. He recorded something about me in a certain context. He wasn't supposed to actually. He was supposed to be talking about our institute, our nonprofit, which is Tibet Health. But he ended up talking about me. In the middle of talking about me, he giggled. And he said, because I thought how I liked Tibetan culture. And he said, and you even dressed up like a monk. You even dressed up like a monk. And then one of my friends said, what do you mean? Why did you say that? You were a monk, weren't you? And I said, well, yes, but I was formally ordained. But I'm so delighted he said that, because that means that the stigma of being an ex-monk, which is there in the Tibetan culture, if you're once a monk, you're monk for life. So it's not in his mind at all anymore, after all that. For a while, he was a little like this when we were there, because we love hanging out together, because he gets to argue with me, because we were kind of co-students when we were younger. He loves to he gets with something, and then he knows I will occasionally say something. Like, well, I shouldn't say that, I'm going to break it. Well, for example, he resigned as Dalai Lama. I'll give you an example. On trial 11, he was so happy. He said, finally, I'm not a hypocrite, he said. I said, well, what do you mean? Oh, whoever I thought you were a hypocrite. I said, well, no, I'm a hypocrite because as the head of the government, I would appoint people, ministers and things, and I'm all going on and on about democracy, and here I'm the autocrat, of Tibet, like the 13th Dalai Lama was. He says, and now I finally recommended on honorable democracy, and they have to elect somebody, and they have to say, fight, tough luck, it's going like that. I'm so happy. Then I said, yeah, but you shouldn't do that, Your Holiness. I said, so why? Then we had a big fight and about it. And the final, and then I won it, of course. And I said, okay, Your Holiness, lazy old Lama who deserves to retire can say, I don't want to be Dalai Lama anymore. I don't want to be head of government anymore. And my next incarnation, I will not be head of government. You can say that. And it's understandable the elder Lama wants to retire, I said. But when there's a new young juicy Dalai Lama, Tibetans will find him and make him be up there to mediate their conflicts when they battle each other. And he said to me, well, you know what? I said that. Shut up. That's cut down. Which means that's enough mouth. Cut down. But what I mean is, don't go giving them any ideas. If they do that, they do that. That's up to them. Don't you go putting ideas in their head. So he thinks he won. So I want to say the first statement in life is, as a human being, is his religion of kindness. His idea that that's the common human religion. And that's why he always says his first and foremost guru was his mother. He always says that. She was so kind to everyone, and everybody knew that. There were beggars that come to the house and so on, and dogs and cats and whatever it was, wild yaks. And so he always said that, before some pious, this great Lama and that tutor and the other, he says that my mother was my really greatest teacher of the most important thing which Buddhism is, which is really compassion, what it really is about. Compassion and love, which is the same as love. That's what Buddhism is. not just emptiness, or sometimes love. And so that's his first aim in life, is to be the apostle of the common human religion of compassion. And the second aim is the one I mentioned, where world religions and indigenous ones all get together and share the burden of helping humanity. And in that case, it's wonderful. They don't have to convert other people because everybody's already converted to something. And it's a matter of them learning how to understand their conversion. And then the Buddhist one is very tricky. Like His Holiness in religious, there was one in Finland actually that I saw on YouTube. I wasn't there, sadly, but people were going, this rabbi and that minister and this Muslim and this person there. I believe, we believe, and we believe. It's going on like that. I think some Baha'i were there, something like that. And then when it came to His Holiness was at the end, and they said, "Well, Your Holiness, what do you believe?" And he said, "Well, I have a little trouble with belief," he said. "I'm a little concerned about belief. What is this belief?" he said, what is that? How do we believe something? And really, what he didn't say it himself, but that was the point I was making. But what the realistic worldview, and Buddhists don't like the word belief, but you could translate worldview as belief. It was a realistic belief, or they call it right worldview, right? I don't like that. I call it realistic. And realistic belief or worldview is the acceptance of causal processes. And that's like science, isn't it? Belief in causes. Things are caused. And then you try to find out what they are. And then when you can, then you try to see to it that the good side of the causes, there will be good and bad things that will go into making something by the way it is, because everything in life is process. And then you try to diminish the negative things and increase the positive things, right? That's the job of technology, backed by science, right? So you're not believing in, but and therefore current modern science is really rather backwards. Because it's not open-minded, because it has a dogma that there's no mind, there's no spirit, the human being has something, it doesn't have some irreducible level of flow of it at a level of irreducible subtlety that cannot be captured in their mathematics and cannot be captured in linguistics and in concepts and so forth, but is there. That's right, which is our life force, our life process. They deny that, and they're going to, everything is mechanistic, and they're going to find out all the parts and pieces, and that's why they spend so many billions of dollars smashing atoms to try to find something that they can't smash, because then we'll give them an idea of an absolute objectivity that they can then hold on to, and which Wittgenstein in the early part of 20th century, the British philosophers were desperate to come up with Bertrand Russell, the final annotation system that would correspond to the simple, irreducible elements of reality, and they would have their empire forever under control, which they failed to do still. And even now, they've reached a state of ridiculous. It's become ridiculous, actually. There's a wonderful Scotch woman, a friend of mine from England, sent me a paper she wrote, where she'd been in the last 8 years, she'd had 2-year grants, handsome sums of money, better than any humanities professors would see, and better than any female school teachers of grades 1 through 8, who are much more important in the education of human beings than some weird physicists who are dealing with making bombs for governments, ultimately, while they're well paid. And then she said, and you get these things, and you do string theory and 11 dimensions, and it's like mystical speculation. And even the regular quantum people who make like quantum computers or something statistical, laser beams and whatever, measure black holes, whatever it is, and they say all that stuff is just nonsense because you can't experiment in things, so therefore there's nothing to observe. Pure speculation. And they always say, "Oh, there will be some. They will get to 11 dimensions. That is impossible. We won't." We'll get to infinite dimensions, and then we'll take a break and be happy. And they 97%, could be 99%. That's very iffy. There's another wonderful book I recommend to you. You will absolutely love it. I met the guy. I only read it. I met the guy. He's a New York Times science writer, reviewer of people's science books. His name is Dennis Overbye. Overbye, Overbye, Dennis. He's really funny. I just like a little tick from talking to scientists. I think, but anyways, including like Stephen Hawking and Einstein and Schrodinger and all these guys. And he's semi-retired. But it's called The Lonely Hearts of the Cosmos. And it's about all the cosmologists and astrophysicists, the ones who tell you the universe is 13 billion years old, give or take 5 billion. One of them told His Holiness that. Said, "Oh, Your Holiness, we're so excited we can really know now the age of the universe." "Oh, really?" So I was so eager to know. What is it? He says, "Oh, 13 billion, give or take 5 billion." "Oh, you're nailing it right now." This book will tell you how they came up with those figures, and you realize it's complete. It has to do with the ego of this guy was arguing with that guy, and the way they're measuring the rotation of the Andromeda galaxy, spiral galaxy, going this way, that way. And that's how they've now discovered dark matter and dark energy, because what you see wouldn't behave the way it does if there wasn't 100 times or 10 times or 50 times the mass of what you see around it, causing it to behave in some other way, but you don't know what it is. And that's the standard model. That's what's surviving the standard model. In other words, a bunch of darkness, which they didn't see yet. And yet they are supposed to be telling us what is real, to listen to them. I'm sorry. They're mystics, and they have to be, and they're more mystical than, astrologers. They are more mystical. If you read, but Dennis Overbye is not saying that at all. He's just showing the personal thing about them. He calls them the lonely hearts of the cosmos. It's so perfect. They are so lonely. Some of them, they used to sit in the Palomar Observatory, or the one on Big Island, here from Big Island, and for 14 hours without peeing, while they're taking photographs through 6 mirrors, in the clear sky, in the dark of the moon, to make some judgment about how many 100 light years is it across such and such a galaxy. So they're truly lonely. They have hard family life. 14 hours up there in the thing. Really good. Dennis Overbye. You'll love it if you read this. Because he likes them and he takes them seriously. On the other hand, his observation is brilliant about the way they behave and the way they are. So you would really realize how what a human thing it is. It's not some thing you're really measuring the world for us. They're just about to get it, which they keep pretending that it's not far from it. It's far from it. Okay, so His Holiness in the world religions, he considers secular humanism one of the world religions with 1 billion followers. And he's much nicer than me about it, and he'll listen to them for days instead of interrupting and arguing about some of their dogmas, as I would do. He's very, he'll have a big dialogue with them where he lays off, and he knows I can't take it, so he doesn't mind if I because I can't interfere, but it's like, but then two argue. One, the quantum people will tend to be more open and want to ask His Holiness questions. What's his view of reality? And then the neuroscience types, they absolutely won't tolerate that. They won't tolerate that until some uncertainty about what their theories are. And they therefore should be asking some pre-modern person. It's like Buddhist studies scholars. I tease them nowadays. I'm saying, you guys are doing Buddhist studies right now. So that's your profession right now. But the one thing you don't mention to your people you talk with is that you think, or rather there's no such thing as a Buddha. And they go, what do you mean? What do we think? Of course you think that. I say, what do you mean? What's your evidence that you think that? I say, well, Buddha didn't have a PhD from Harvard, and you do. And then they smirk, and they sticker, but they know that they're nailed. Because of course he's pre-modern, he doesn't know all the smart things they know about how to destroy the planet. Because they know, and they're doing it. Or rather, even there's some great ones, but they're not stopping. if they put half the energy they put into 13 dimensions and string theory, into chaining themselves to the White House or to the Exxon Mobil front thing, to make them invest in alternatives and be the kings of the new energy system on the planet that we need, which will not continue to pollute the temperature. I think they've been listened to. But no, they don't do that. Anyway, so he considers that a world religion anyway. So he's very polite with them, and with those guys like me, not arguing with them, getting them to be open their mind, and to develop. But there are not the only one. There are other philosophers and scholars who have tried to get them back into realizing this. I probably, many of you here. How many of you think you're going to have a future life? Should I just we'll do a quick poll? How many of you have heard that? Oh, this is a good. This is preaching to the choir. Wonderful. Some people didn't do it, but there are a few heads that did go up. I see, and that's true. And I do hope, but in one way, at one level, but at another level, do I make decisions in this life, thinking not just about my pension, thinking I don't have to think about my graveside because they already got one. In the artist cemetery in Woodstock, which is ashes, not the body. But she already arranged something, some portion of it. Some of them will take and throw in the Ganges, but some of them will be there with the artists in Woodstock. And I don't have to think about that. But do I think that, well, I'm going to do this, which doesn't make sense in terms of the remaining, however it is, time I have in this life from the age of 82 and 82, 83. But what about next life? What am I doing about next life? I don't necessarily factor that in, but that's really critical to factor in. The Dharma practice comes when we realize that death is immediate, because it will be immediate at a time when it's coming, and it will be an immediate happening. And at that time, the time between right now and when that happens to me, for example, at that time will seem like no time. So it's already immediate. And then that's not morbid, and that then makes this time more likely. What are we waiting for? What? Like a real title of my book, what might have been CTFU. Cheer the to the people in art. Especially in America. For example, any politician who's upset should not be voted for. Even liberals. Everything is so horrible, but I'll make it nice. We don't want to hear about that. That should be an automatic disqualifier. If they see everything as fine. Okay? They should see everything as good. For example, we're having this talk, and I'm deeply grateful. I'm giving me the excuse to talk. And also now that's more rare for me. Because third book I want to mention to you, Lorna Byrne, the Irish lady, marvelous Irish lady, who has a book that I got to meet her because of. I did a podcast for her. And then she came to visit us at our house because she liked my conversation with her, my interview with her, my podcast. And the book is called Angels in My Hair. And she was considered retarded as a child because when she saw someone, she would also see their guardian angel. And she would talk to them talking to you by looking above your head and talking to somebody. So you thought something wrong with her. And then her husband died when she was quite young, and she had taken care of the children, blah, blah, she was not a male, couldn't be a priest. She's a faithful, loyal Catholic, and all that. But she's totally deals with angels all the time. So she came to visit us. So she met my Nina, and then Nina immediately gets down to business and says, "Do I have a guardian angel?" She says, "Yes." And then, "What is my guardian angel wearing? What does she look like?" And she's apparently wearing saffron colored or salmon colored robes, and they're very bright, shiny, and luminous, according to Lorna. And then it's a relent, and she says, "Well, what does she have to say to me? Does she have a message for me?" And Lorna's looking, "Yes. What's that?" She says, "Well, you have to speak up more. Your angel is trusting if you don't speak up." Then, well, actually, first she said, of course, you have this, your husband, and you have to feed him. Didn't notice that, so she doesn't remember that. Then she says, but you have to speak up more about things with people in situations and everywhere, even if it means interrupting the professor. So I can't get too many persons in, right? I get interrupted. And please interrupt.
You were getting better about not getting annoyed about being interrupted.
Oh, good, okay, good. That's good.
So,
So that's another one I recommend, third book, Lorna Byrne, Angels in My Hair. It's really marvelous. And I stupidly didn't ask what my angel says and what it has to say, but I'm waiting, she's coming back. She's in touch, they're texting, and she's gonna come back when she goes to Omega next time. And I will get to ask. But you know, we don't have to act like whatever.
but you didn't really believe
What's
that.
that?
You didn't really believe that there was an angel for you, did you?
I didn't?
That's why you did not.
Oh, you're right. You're so right. No, that's another step. Reminds me of another story. When I was in, I made notes. So when I was in benefit for the Happy Hearts Foundation, started by this lady, this wonderful Czech model who was at Phuket during the tsunami, and a lot of people died. She was hanging on a tree, and they rebuilt a school in Haiti, which was destroyed in the earthquake, killed many children. The roof fell on that one, and they built a new one. And then they gave an award to Wycliffe Jean, who was a famous Haitian musician, like Elvis Presley of Haiti or something, who of course lives in New Jersey. And he said, well, I went with whatever her name is, and we went and we saw the rebuilt school, and the town was wonderful. And then I went because there was a guy who was 104 who lived in that village and a town, and I wanted to go ask him what was his secret. And then everybody in the bed was leaning for it. So I went there and I asked him what is his secret. And then he said to me, well, you see that lady sitting here next to me, who's 103? He said, whatever she says, I say, you're right, dear. With some pinstripes in that benefit, it looked really, really disappointed. They brought down. Anyway, okay. So that's it. So the third aim in life of His Holiness then is the way he used to say it, but in Haley we used to really mention three, except occasionally we mention the fourth. And the third one is as a Tibetan. I want to know your phone. Oh, it needs.
He's in the meeting.
Anyway, the third aim in life is as a Tibetan speaking up for the Tibetan people who are under genocide for 70 years, on and off genocide, and ethnocide at least, and at the moment they genocide. All the children are in colonial schools, where they can only learn Chinese and what's happening now. 1 million children, even now, under Xi Jinping. And there's been on and off like that. And the moments when they weren't doing so much, but basically they were not allowed Tibetan culture to exist. So that was his third aim. And then his fourth aim was to bring Buddhist inner science, or rather, not even say Buddhist, say Indian inner science, the Buddhist side of the conversation, which was centralized in Nalanda Monastic University in ancient India, and hundreds of other monastic universities that taught the nature of reality. This taught the skills and the curriculum of open-mindedness that I'm talking about. And to bring that back into India, to reinforce India's own inner sciences, to resist the materialist one, in a sense, and the Western one as being the final, ultimate, highest knowledge that human beings have ever had, which is unfortunately the attitude of we Americans, mostly we are the smartest people that ever lived, we think. And we have some really good things, but we may not be have. We may have some stupidities going on. But anyway, that's his forte. So, but now lately, there's a Time magazine special about his Bliss, which I think didn't get published yet. I saw it ahead of time, where he had some photography about him, and then he gives the four aims, and the Indian one is the third one now. Because he says he feels India, he owes something, because he's lived 80 years in India, and he only lived 24 years in Tibet. So his body is more made of rice and dal than it is of momo. So he gets a son of India as well as a son of Tibet. He has to offer to India. And I've been working on that at the Tibet house. We're working on that in there. It's what I call Vajra Yoga. And I've discovered amazing things like Patanjali and various things. Some of them I knew, but some new things about how the so-called Hindu six philosophies or six scientific aspects of Indian inner science are totally interactive at every time, from their origin to their modern form after Buddhism was wiped out by Muslim occupation of India in the 13th century, 12th century. They were totally interactive with the Buddhist side. So it isn't a question of self versus selflessness, a Hindu-Buddhist complete division in India at all, was not the case. It was only the case that the Muslims didn't like the Buddhists because the Buddhists were not fundamentalists or something like that. They wouldn't converge, and then also the Muslims had never had monks. Even the Sufis are married people or lay people, so they never had monasticism like Buddhism and Christianity do. And so they thought all those monks were kind of useless, and they burned down all their monasteries. So, but still, Buddhism is still there in Hinduism in a sense. So it's really wonderful. I'm enjoying it enormously, this activity. Okay, so that's His Holiness's thing. And that was in my notes, that was telling you something about me, what I'm trying to do about him. So, okay, so wisdom is bliss. My reason is reality is bliss. The reality is bliss is a scientific discovery of the Buddha. For example, I'm 3 years late, not exclusively my fault, in finishing a book on Tibetan medicine, which I'm writing with a wonderful Tibetan doctor that I know. When I was a young monk in Dharamsala, 60 years ago now, 1964, my Mongolian spiritual friend, who took me there and introduced me to the Dalai Lama, under the guise, he had me to come on the guise that the Dalai Lama would make me a monk. I was desperate to be a monk, and he wouldn't make me a monk. And he said, "You don't need to be a monk, listen to me," but because I wouldn't, because I knew better, because I was 21 years old. And so I had to be a monk. So he said, "But I'll take you to Dalai Lama, maybe he'll make you a monk." And then when he introduced me to Dalai Lama, which he did in a very nice way, but he said, he wants to be a monk, but don't make him a monk. Because he's not going to be able to be a monk, because it's not his karma. Then he said, "But you decide, I'm just an old Mongolian monk, that's what you decide." So His Holiness took his time about making me a monk. And then he eventually did. And then, sure enough, I resigned. And a couple of years later, I realized that I couldn't accomplish my purpose of being born in New York City, on Manhattan Island, as a monk, because American people subliminally perceived me, as my daughter put it, when she saw a picture of me as a monk. She said, "Oh, look at Daddy. He looks like Henry Miller in drag." So, how can we be real in America? So anyway, so yeah. So anyway, yes, and in that book, my job in the book, although I was forced to study Tibetan medicine by my teacher, by my spiritual friend, and I loved it actually. And so first, I wasn't a pre-med or something at Harvard or wherever I went to school, and so I didn't learn about the kidney and the liver and then whatever, the spleen and the pancreas and all these things, and it didn't tell you really very well to understand the whole machinery and the living reality of the incredible thing that the human body is. Body-mind complex and the nervous system, It's amazing. So I really love doing it. But I didn't practice it. So, but my job is, we Westerners who do a little Dharma practice, a little yoga, whatever we do, Tai Chi, acupuncture, health food, etc. We do that. And then the minute we have a serious diagnosis, we're in the hands of the machine people. And sometimes it works out, and often it doesn't. And because they are not really optimistic often about us by the time we get to them. And so my job is to show the scientific nature of Buddha's understanding of the body, what's called the medicine Buddha, which is the thing that, for example, when Buddhism went to China, Korea, Japan, places like that, even Tibet, it was medicine, the monk's knowledge of how the body works, how you relate to plants, and how you relate to your mind, body and mind, that enabled them to help people heal. And often they would heal an empress or a great grandmother, a dowager or something. And then the people would start taking the Dharma seriously when they actually knew about their health. And they could help them with their health the way they were doing. Story in Tibet was some Indian doctors were wandering over the Trans-Himalayan Tibetan plateau, and they met a young girl who was putting her grandmother in a cave and crying, and she and the grandma were crying, and grandma was quite ill, And then these doctors saw and met them and said, "Why are you crying?" And she said, "Well, I love my grandma, but our village is very subsistence poor. And we had a rule that when the old people can no longer do anything useful because of their own wellness, they sort of go back to nature, like sannyasa, they go back to nature. And they have leopards in Tibet, and so on in those days. And we go, "You don't want it," because I love my grandma. So, and grandma likes me, and so on. And so then they said, "Well, if grandma was well and she could do whatever duty that she did more helpful to the village, would you really like that?" And they said, "Yeah." So then they camped there with them, and they helped her with some herbal things with the knowledge they brought from Indian Buddhist medicine, Indian Ayurveda, Buddhist Ayurveda, so to speak. And grandma got well and went back to the village. And everyone was happy. And then the king heard about it, and then these became royal physicians. Before the Dharma texts and Padmasambhava, people were alive, that happened in Tibet. And that happened, similar happened in Japan and China. And there are stories that medicine Buddha is a big deal. Yao Shufo, Yakushiji, Yakupa, something like that. They have medicine Buddha is a very important thing. He's a blue Buddha. Medicine Buddha is a deep blue color, like a sapphire, azure blue. And because blue is the color of intelligence in the form of analysis of reality, which is the transmutation of the subliminal, the ignorance-dominated energy of anger. And so anger or hatred against suffering becomes intelligence that analyzes things to help heal suffering. That's a wonderful thing in Indian science, Indian neuroscience. What I would call Indian neuroscience, some body science. Okay, so that's my job, and so therefore to get people to really shift their faith away from the materialistic grip on reality and really develop a strong confidence that somebody does know things. But the reason I got into Buddhism was not I wasn't looking for religion, actually. I was against religion, very much so. And because religions that I heard about from people, the way they told me about it, was you can't understand yourself, you can't know anything. Finally, you have to just believe something. And I didn't like that. And the science side was also, I was annoyed with the current state of science. And the science is, you can analyze this thing, this gene, this thing, and you can know a lot about it. And then misunderstanding, I think Socrates' dialectical maneuver of how he didn't know anything. But you'll just know all that you don't know. Because materialistic science thinks reality is a quantity, and it's an immeasurable quantity, actually. And so you'll never get to measure all of it. You can't calculate it all, obviously. So I didn't like that, being told how stupid I was, in principle, in a sense. I didn't mind being told stupid until I learned something. I'm going to have to stay stupid. When I met Buddhists. They told me that not only can you understand yourself and your world, but you have to if you want to be happy. If you live in a world that somebody else tells you it's got to be like this and that doesn't make sense to you, then you're going to not be happy at all. You're like, well, you'll walk out in a red light and you'll run over. And so that really turned me on. So it is really the science. The idea of modernity being so smart is really wrong. If you are a materialist and you just think you're just a mechanism, like there's some philosopher who he has a PhD in tennis power. He writes a book. Oh, great! I proved there's no free will. It's called determinism. Oh, great, brilliant! It's really nice, and everybody can feel it totally helps us, right? Then they'll do what? Then they'll vote whatever way you want, or whatever people tell them. So silly. How can this? We're very determined and we have freedom. We know I can eat 10 pounds of chocolate today and I'll be really sick and I'm hard. I know that. So I can choose not to. But that's freedom. One more can eat. Only 1 pound. Okay. So I'm supposedly writing that. What is the fact that reality is a bliss is the scientific discovery of a Buddha, quote unquote Buddha, a previously human or divine, seemingly individual being who has entered a field of subjective experience beyond the ordinary dualistic subject-object split, where the ordinary one seems as different from his or her awakened Buddha consciousness as an ordinary waking consciousness is different from unconscious sleep consciousness, and where he, she, they has blossomed into infinite yet immediate expansion from partial perspectival focus into seemingly inconceivably omniscient, enduring omnipresence. That's the notes I wrote this morning, inspired by your sentence. I know it goes farther quickly. I don't know. Tibetans coined a wonderful word, sangye, to indicate this condition. The sang part means to awaken, and gye means to expand. And therefore, I'm particularly focused on that word because I'm annoyed. The Translators Guild on Buddhist text, that one of them that I'm a little bit affiliated with, insists on only saying awakening. You can't say enlightenment anymore. People, they submit a manuscript to them and they change all the world use of the word enlightenment to awakening. I'm so annoyed. Even the Tibetans have awakening enlightenment as one word. And they do it because they think the Western Enlightenment was where materialism started, which is partly true. But on the other hand, materialism had a certain confidence of the human being from the Renaissance, that the human being could actually understand something and make it better. And that's good. And that's we like modern science. I'm not against modern science if they're scientific. When they're dogmatic, acting like mystified high priests, I'm annoyed with them. But they're being unscientific. So don't report back to, don't send me a report card that I'm anti-science. I'm totally for science. It's just they have to realize they're not the greatest scientists. Yeah, they're very destructive. They can start a thermonuclear war. They can give them equipment. Luckily, in the corruption of the Russian oligarch in Russia, their nukes don't work undoubtedly. It's really expensive. Every 6 months you have to renew the plutonium. You have to spend a lot of money, but you can build a big yacht in Cyprus if you're the Russian officer who's supposed to renew the nuke. So don't be frightened of it. They probably don't work. Most oil probably don't. They'll never use it anyway because they love that Kremlin. It's like a giant ice cream cone, and they don't want to see that reduced to dust, which it would be instantaneous. If they blow up New York. So forget about that dream. Not gonna work. And support the Ukrainians who are crying out loud. So anyway, these two takeaways who want freedom. So those two. So that's Buddha and what it is. Okay. So in this light, so then we come to the Four Noble Truths. I did the four life. So now in the Four Noble Truths is what people call, for example, though that's not a good translation of Buddha's diagnostic prescription for human psychotic And actually, one of Buddha's insights, which Buddhists would like to say, is we are all psychology to some extent. Meaning, we are all psychologically and culturally, right, mutually doing it, create a world in which we think we live, which is not the world in which we are living, actually. We are mistaken about that. And that's what Buddha's insight is. And when we, as long as we're in that situation, yes, the fact is, nothing will be satisfactory. We will not have real satisfaction. A little bit temporary relief from that suffering is called the suffering of change, because it won't last, and therefore we'll be frustrated. Right? We'll have a little relief, yeah, but that relief, as we get more experience about it, we know it will not last, and so that's still ultimately it's kind of suffering. And that was the only kind of non-suffering there was. He wouldn't make such a fact. He would not expound such a fact. But the reason he expounds that is that's like just saying, like a doctor saying, I recognize your pain. I recognize your symptom. You have this problem. I recognize. That's all it is. So it's not a truth, like something you have to believe. It's just something you have to acknowledge and notice by redefining, reordering your priorities about what you see. You have 20 beautiful houses, 30. And Nagarjuna wrote this letter to the king, the first book I was written by Kalyana Mitra. Read to me, taught me the language by reading it to me and having me translate it to the world. He tells the king, don't make huge palaces with hundreds of rooms. It wastes the money that society and your people need, and you can only be in one room at a time. For example, very common sense in buckets to do massive houses and so that's a fact. That's a fact. And noble is not good. Nowadays, in Buddha's time, noble was good used because what the word noble meant and was a class term, but it was the people who were able to go to the Vedic ceremony, who could go to church. They had a color bar. There were some inferior people who were the darker skinned, actually, and the word for caste in ancient India was varna, which means color, and they couldn't go to that ceremony. So the word Arya or noble meant someone who would go to the ceremony. So it is a fact for the supposedly educated people. But when we read noble in our thing, we think of some snobby person, like the Duke of Wellington or something, with a British accent, doing Brexit because we don't want to be so it's not a nice fact. So I changed the translation as friendly, because that's what he meant. Someone who cares about you. That the old idea of noblesse oblige is not that. Someone who takes responsibility for other people. But that's not what we think of when we hear noble. We think of some snobby person, right? Jet set person. So friendly. And then I threw in fun. So 4 friendly fun facts. Then Sharon Salzberg challenged me when she did a podcast for my book. And she said, how can you think truth of suffering is fun? But I had it. I was ready. We made her book on faith. And she had a terrible childhood, dear Sharon did. My close colleague among them, there are a lot of people. And really bad. I mean, father was crazy, mother died. I mean, it was really good. And when she went to college at SUNY Buffalo and was set in a world religion course or something, and she heard that there was some great teacher of humanity who said that everybody's miserable. She was delighted. She realized she wasn't the only one. And that everybody was happy. So for you, it was a fun fact, right? So that's fun. And the second friendly fun fact is that there's a cause of that unfortunate condition. of living in ignorance, living in misknowing, living under misunderstanding. And that is the misunderstanding, especially of your own nature, and thinking that you have an absolute identity that is different from everyone and everything else. And therefore, when your inner voice speaks to you, I hate that, or I want that, whatever it is, it seems like a command coming to you that you can't question about what your own reaction is going to be about the situation. And that's the root thing. And then, of course, you project that sense of alienation and separation into everybody else. So you feel everybody else feels that same way about yourself. And then you realize how they're annoyed with you because only mom, for the very short period of time, and in case you were ever totally in love and were beloved, nobody else ever agreed with you that you're the most important thing in the world. And you're the one saying you're sure I'm like Descartes, the only thing I know is that well, I'm here when I think I'm. That's the absolute thing I can cling to. That's a big mistake. Yeah. Right? So that he gave, that's fun because we can deal with that. We can question ourselves. We can say, am I really just so right all the time? Is the way I see it really the only way? Should I be really indignant when people don't agree with me? Should I put them down and so forth? And should I, am I in struggle with everyone? Always can I expect them? Therefore, do I preemptively want to strike them, etc.? Do I expect them to strike me? Is that all correct? Actually, not. It's the analysis, but that's the cause of why we're unhappy. He said, or self-involvement, or self-obsession, or self-preoccupation. It's like I wake up in the morning, I think, what am I getting out of the day? Instead of what is everybody else getting out of the day? Then at least I forgot about me among them. There's just so many of them. And they need so many things. They haven't even learned all the things they really do need. Right? So that's the second one. Friendly fun fact that we can get leverage over what causes us to suffer by understanding it. And then the really super friendly fun fact is that the real reality is nearby. So actually we're already free of it. If we only knew. Really? Life is fun. I chose fun actually because my beloved friend Andrew Harvey, in one of his books where he's really into joy, but he really disses fun. Oh, fun. That's just fun entertainment. That's how I feel it. Then he's going on about how it's wonderful to be childlike and be joyful. Well, but children want to have fun. So I was, the reason I told him that he was amused that he influenced my choice of friendly fun fact. Okay, and fact is like it's a reality, it's not truth. That's the problem with the word truth is it can be a state of things, but also it's a proposition about things. And so and the reason they translated Satya as that way, which is a possible translation, not wrong. The reason they translated it that way is that they wanted to make the first English translators of the Buddhist thing wanted to make sure it was known as a religion. They thought it was a religion. They had uniforms and monks and temples. And so you have to have a truth that you have to believe in. But the four friendly fun facts, the Buddha doesn't say you have to believe these. He says about the suffering, the inadequacy of the ignorance-driven life, that you have to notice it. You have to notice it. About the causal one, you have to investigate it. Second one. About the third one, you have to imagine it. Imagine it. Not believe, but imagine. What would it be if everything was great? If I was really happy. We were starting with a win-win. What would it be? How would it be? Let's imagine. So that you can aim for it. If you don't imagine it, you can aim for it. And the fourth one is you have to travel on it. So none of them, and then the first one is realistic belief, but that's only open-mindedness, acceptance of being part of a causal process, of being in a causal process. And immediately, the one thing, the sense of self-identity that we have, which is it's like you can find it in yourself unless you're already enlightened, and many of you maybe. And I couldn't tell, not being enlightened myself fully. But when you look at a picture of yourself 20, 30, 40 years ago, depending on your age, and you see yourself in a scene, in case you're not taking a picture, but you're in it, and then try to remember the scene. And when you do remember it, it's kind of like you then occupy the figure in the picture who doesn't look like you now. It's been some time ago. So then that gives you the false assurance that something is exactly the same now about you as it was at that time. And we do find that. We remember something. But there is no such thing. We only fabricate that. You know. And although that can be very valuable. I have something in the last chapter of the book that I really get into because of that fact. When I look at myself as a young father and husband on a beach with beautiful golden children and a beautiful golden partner. And then I realize, and if I can then click it, or get back where I remember I'm there or somebody else took a picture. I'm not often there because I'm usually taking a picture. Especially with the early children, click all the time. And the first children, in fact, it's a miracle they're still there since this morning. And anyway, when I do, I realize, oh no, I'm worried about my visa. I can remember I was worried about the visa. I was worrying about where's my wallet. I was worried about where's the car. Then somebody towed it away. You know, I'm like completely not in the moment there. I can see it because I'm completely in my mind and elsewhere. And so about from that, but now I can appreciate it by imagining being in such a beautiful situation. And that's important because when we do really know nirvana, which we can and will do, and some of you may already have, then we realize we are always there. It's the biggest anticlimax you can possibly think of to become enlightened. The ultimate anticlimax, rather than peak experience. It's an anticlimactic. But then everything is the one peak, and it always has been. And yeah. Okay. So I didn't charge my watch. What is the time? Only close to the time.
Perfect time.
Yeah.
Any question of what we've done so far? So I just wanted to name what we do today. That is, this is physics. This is not spirituality. This is not Buddhism. This is Buddha's physics. You know, reality. What's physics have to do with reality? It includes material, but it also includes more subtle level. You know, it all matters. You know. Okay, so the first class, the next class will be biology, and the third class will be psychology. Any questions? Before we finally start, anybody on this topic? Any? Yeah. Oh yes, school to temple.
I have a question. Working with one of the observatories up there, and you don't
Speak
agree
loudly,
with
loudly.
astronomers. So, but that's the career. What do you suggest people in this career to do? Like maybe give up this career, become.
Well, you have happiness scrolling on your back there.
Ah.
That's happiness, right there.
I mean,
I
You
know,
know.
what's her name?
Emma.
Emma? Yeah. I am. You want daddy to be happy? Yeah? So when you say, what do you do? Be happy.
Yeah, I mean, we do the job, right?
Yeah.
And then also this, I think it really helped people with their understanding of the universe, although definitely not at the level of Buddhists, not to the level of Buddha can see the world, right?
Well, don't you remember the same thing? If you meet a Buddha on the road, kill him. What does that mean? Do they mean to attack somebody that you think is a Buddha? No, but they mean that those things that they did something you can't be. maybe you have some aspect of Buddha about you when you're really happy. So when you say, what do you do? Well, when you, this we're doing, I will do this more in detail next session in biology. The reason that India developed yoga so much longer before anybody else systematically did so, and made such an emphasis on both meditation and I would call it even realization. The word that people always translate as meditation, bhavana, I think it makes something real. So realization. And meditation is when they're thinking about what they're learning about. So whatever you do in your mind is doing something. So the most important thing to do with your mind is imagine things being better. And for when you do that for yourself, that means you're concerned for yourself, and that means you're loving yourself. When you do that for Emma, it means you want to make things better for her, so that means you love Emma. When you talk to anybody, you are loving, when you want them to be better, the way you do whatever you do, that's loving them all. You have to see Sambo. There's a bodhisattva called Samantabhadra, it's 100% good. That means they're all goody. And he's a joint being there with Emma. So that's what you do, is you choose happiness. Some friends of ours gave us a painting by a contemporary painter, which has a bunch of cherries on a fairly blank background. And then underneath it has a phrase. And it says, people are always looking for happiness. Happiness is a choice. It says. I really like that. We have it in our dining room, I think.
Menla.
Or we have it, we moved it to, Menla, in the dining room, Menla, at the spa, at our blissful spa. So as an example, one example, Shanti gave us, and what as I say next time, and then this will be the last time I say, so the first. That Shanti gave us says about what to do, where Dharma practice becomes ethics, becomes etiquette, body language. He says, in all my future life, when anybody ever asks me for directions to go somewhere, like where's the ladies' room, I will never point with this finger. It's over there. I will gesture with an open hand, like when you greet an honored guest and invite them into your hospitality. And I will invite them to that place where they want to go. And I will think at the time, now I'm inviting you to the ladies' room. And someday I will invite you to Nirvana. And to open the door to reality and escort you there. So that's just a tiny little thing. I mean, that's what we start to naturally want to do. The more cheerful we feel, right? And it's not necessarily a Buddhist thing. I have a friend who is a Christian preacher in some kind of Universalist church in Los Angeles. A black gentleman named Michael Beck, and he was one time when I first met him. First met him. He was doing a sermon that day, which was around when I was thinking what I'm thinking now, and his quote was called "All right already," and he was saying that Jesus used to say, "Be of good cheer." And I don't remember which gospel it is and what I know. But I don't think I ever looked it up, because I'm sure it did say that. Be of good cheer. So that's what we do. And then actually many great things occur to us when we're of good cheer, right? And my final proof of that is the Zoloft commercial for anybody who ever watches television. If you ever saw that commercial, there's a lady in the kitchen with a kid and a dog and a grumpy husband in the morning. And she's put in one of the plastic waffles that they sell you, poisonous coat. And it's smoking out of the toaster. The kid has had porridge and that's been thrown somewhere. I think that's for the older kid. Husband is bitching about his coffee and his paper. And the dog the other is doing some horrible thing. And then it pans out the window, see the green grass. And the little yellow flowers of the weeds in the grass pop off their stem and they spell out, no. They don't say that. And you get the idea, she took a mood altering, non-side effects, no substance. It made her temporarily feel a lot better. And then stand, bang, new waffle, dog out the door. Kid picky for porridge, whatever. Ready for the day. Takes very long. But she CTFU. Okay, yes, dear. Thank you very much. We dedicate to merit. We all dedicate to merit. Then we quickly become as wise as Manjushri, as loving as Avalokiteshvara, as goody as Samantha Bhadra, right away to be able to help all other beings become just equal to us. Like that. Same as that. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Was it okay?